Welcome everyone to the Love Now movement. Today we're speaking again with Penny Kelly, and I know many of you have listened to the interview we did last year with her, which was fascinating. And Penny is coming to New York for the Multiple Realities Conference, which will be held in October this year, October 20th and 21st. So please come and join us in person. And if you can't get to New York, you can always join us on the live stream. Tickets are selling, so please come and join us. And I'm so happy again to speak with Penny because we had such an interesting talk the last time. And Penny is someone that I probably could talk to for about 7 hours at one time, but we're going to keep it short for about 30 minutes because I know that she's going to be divulging a lot of information as well at the conference. So thanks, Penny, for joining us. I'm so happy to actually physically see you this time.
Yes, it's good to be here. Thank you.
So you've talked about the evolution of the human being, but I think when you speak about evolution, you're not really speaking about the evolution that we learn in biology at high school. So what do you actually mean when you talk about evolution?
I'm talking about the evolution of consciousness from almost powerless to full power. And I think if someone has not undertaken any effort at personal development, then they wouldn't have a clue that there are certain powers that are built in certain stages of development that are built into us. And those stages are really critical in terms of like what you can do, what you can know, how you can see, what you can pick up, and then what you can create with that consciousness. That's all kind of like off there in, I don't know, Never Never Land for most people. And it should be something that's brought right front and center and that we begin to address in a practical, everyday way. If we really want to change the world and make the world different, we're not going to do it with this same kind of consciousness. You have to evolve it. So when I'm talking about evolution of consciousness, that's it.
And what are those ways that we do evolve it? You're not speaking about traditional religion, I suppose?
No, oh heavens. No, definitely not. I think traditional religion provided a basic framework. It's like when you're little kids and you believe your parents are trying to teach you the value of giving gifts, and in believing in something beyond yourself. Then Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny are the perfect setup for teaching that, you give gifts and you believe in something that looks impossible, etc. So, religion gets us going. But if you stick with it to a point where now you're moving into what I'm going to call the real world, and eventually you learn that Santa Claus is really just your parents giving you gifts, just an excuse to give gifts, then there's this little bit of a shock, and then you join in and start giving gifts, etc. But to come to spiritual maturity, I think you have to go beyond the religions. And in order to do that, you have to become aware of what is possible for you as a human being. And that then, there's stages of that unfolding. And we're all familiar with, Piaget and the sensory motor and concrete operations and mental operations, and then abstract reasoning. And there are further stages of development beyond that, and I won't go into that here. I'll say more at the conference about some of that, but I think it's really important to still honor the basics of religion, which are love and compassion and generosity and honesty and etc. And then we have to add some of the other capacities that come as you develop yourself spiritually. So spiritual maturity goes beyond religion, way beyond religion, but ends up not poo-pooing that, just not limiting yourself to that. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of what I would call promised, I often hear the term the promised land, and it really, you're the land and you're the promise. And you can't get to that unless you let go of some of the other things. And I think also you have to have somebody who's walked that path, done those things, and said, this is how it works, this is what's possible, this is what consciousness does. And people are starting to fiddle with that. And I think a lot more fiddling is required. So, and in a very formalized, developmental, staged way, you can develop people, and I know that for a fact because I've been doing that for 38 years. But it's, you get people that step into their power, and it's impressive, and it's heartening. So
as people are stepping into their power, what is the relationship for them between what you're calling plasma and consciousness? Or what is the relationship simply between plasma and consciousness?
Okay, so I'll say a little bit here, because it's too big to, to just do in this next little half hour or so. But one of the things that happens is that when you come to begin owning your power, you have to open up to see the true nature of reality. And that, one of the things that you cannot ignore is science, because science is actually just the practice of observing and then making decisions about what you observed, and then being open to revise that decision if further information comes up that modifies what you thought you observed. And so science is very much practical, it's down to earth, et cetera, et cetera.
Sorry, just just ask you that let's also keep in mind that with the understanding of science, that when we're observing, that we're also creating or affecting what is observed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the piece that people get really scared about. They don't really, what I've run into across the board, in everybody who has been in my classes over the years, they come to this place where they discover a little piece of their power, and it scares the daylights out of them. They are, I think, frightened by what is possible. And there's this whole legacy of, is it demons? Is it witches? Is it the devil? Is it bad spirits? What is it? There's only you and this immense field of conscious awareness, I call it mind space, that you live in. And so one of the things, to go back to our original thought, was that when you begin to observe the nature of reality, one of the things that you run into is there's this response that things have when you look at them, when you listen to them, believe it or not, just listening, because you're filtering through and you're responding at the deep level, or speaking, but all of that has an impact. And then you have to begin to say, what's responding? Why is that changing as I look at it, as I listen to it, as I feel it through me? And that brings you to this place of plasma. So, and I'll say more at the conference about mind space, consciousness energy, particle cooperation, and then pattern thought. And when you get a pattern, you've got a plasma. And the plasma is the thing that is forming, as you speak, as you look at it, in response to your consciousness. And I think it scares the daylights out of people because they don't want to think that reality is unstable. And I have some, I have some amazing data that shows that it is. And it's very stable compared to some other dimensional systems, but it's not as stable as we think it is, and it can change, boom, just in a heartbeat. So plasma is the stuff that, that begins to collect. It's like this, the definition of a plasma is it is a house of fields or an area of frequency. And all of the frequencies in that area are exquisitely tuned to one another. And you shift one and they all shift, they all move together. And they all, they hang together. And that is usually kind of a rotating form. It's complex, but in trying to simplify it, think of it as just a small vortex. And really that vortex is the center of a wave. And, and then a particle forms at the end of the vortex. So you get this, this plasma. If you get a plasma that forms, then a body or material begins to collect around that. It's just the nature of reality. And when that happens, then you begin to be able to create form and to create matter. If we can learn to shift, or I'll say manipulate the fields in a plasma, or if we can learn to duplicate the fields in a plasma, then we can learn to duplicate the matter. We right now duplicate the form, and it's pretty much the same. You end up shifting the plasma, but you can do it the other way too. You can have, you can create the fields, and the matter will collect. It will actually form in front of your eyes, and we're heading toward that. It's an amazing power. It's an amazing capacity. And so plasma, the relationship between plasma and consciousness is that everything, plasma is energy in a relationship state. And so you end up with consciousness shaping plasma, plasma collecting matter. And so what you realize is, oh, wow, it's consciousness that makes this world what it is. It's consciousness. And when we begin to talk or envision something that we need, something that we wish would happen, that's when we begin the creation process. And we're not powerful. Sometimes it takes 200 years for that thing to manifest that this woman over here was praying for, 200 years earlier, but it still manifests. So, everything is possible. We just haven't developed our power very much. And so therefore, we don't get the effects that other beings who have developed power will get. And you can, if you've been to any other dimensions or been in contact with other beings, you witness the power of that consciousness in a firsthand way. And it's a shocker. So it's a wonderful shocker, I might add. So it's really important, I think, to keep in mind that that there's a lot, that we're on the cusp of learning right now, a lot. And that's something that I think we're going to dive into head first at the conference. And I think as a civilization, we're diving into that as well. And I'm very excited about our future. Very, very.
So
all good things.
It's nice to hear someone who's excited and not doing the doomsday thing. So as we're moving forward, so consciousness informs plasma, correct?
It actually forms plasma.
Consciousness
forms
plasma. Right.
Yeah, right.
You mentioned about the lady down the road who was having this wish and hope for, and then it manifests 200 years later. So that would be a positive manifestation. But what about if consciousness is, for example, stuck in a state of fear or anxiety about something happening?
Yep.
Would you say that when we worry about something, or if we're very concerned about something like missiles, yep, or World War III or something like that, Are we also in the act of creating it while we are worrying about it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It goes, but the rule is the rule, and the rule is that consciousness creates. It is the nature of consciousness to create. So you can't have all just the goodies and not have, you have to have the responsibility that you're creating. And, when you've got a civilization that doesn't support people or beings coming to full power, and they're trying to, create a slave thing, it's really hard to get your mind around power because you don't think you have any. And that's really an important, I'm going to say, shift or step in terms of, getting a civilization moving into a creative mode instead of a destructive mode. It can go either way. And for civilization to evolve, you have to move past what you have. And some people classify that moving past as destroying. It's not necessary, because when you move past a particular framework, matrix of events and thoughts and forms and buildings and routines, etc., you literally change the time, the frequencies. And time is a matter of frequencies. And so, we end up saying, that they're destroying this or no, we're just changing. We're reaching for the better mousetrap, maybe is a good analogy.
Does that also mean a different timeline?
Well, say that again, it didn't come across.
Is that what some people might call shifting literally to a different timeline?
Yeah, we do it all the time. The timeline of 1850 is nothing like our timeline in 1950 or in 2015. The timeline shifts. We shift it continuously in a nice, smooth, kind of like a, drum roll. Mm-hmm. And it's happening all the time. And I think the mistake that people make is that they're expecting some big explosion. And they're going to wake up tomorrow morning and it's all going to be better, or it's all going to have collapse. Well, it doesn't work that way. Nobody wants collapse. This is a fabulous, fabulous dimension. The richness and the complexity here is stunning. And so, we some of us really want all that richness to remain. And yes, we're going to lose some things. Yes, things are going to change. And yes, we're going to do things differently. But there's no reason to not just keep that at a nice, smooth pace so that everybody can keep up. And it takes time for people to get new ideas, to adopt new ideas. And what I call the civilizational generation, how we have generations of kids and they're about 15 years apart. Mm-hmm. We have civilizational generations and they're about 50 years apart. So there's huge changes every 50 years. And I just remember my grandma, who was maybe 90 something, just looking at the TV when the men landed on the moon, supposedly landed on the moon. Whether they did or not is not our issue here. Right. What she said was, wow, look what, in my lifetime, we started with horse and buggy, long skirts, button-up shoes, and a sleigh. And now we're landing on the moon. That was a huge timeline shift for her. She lived to be 101. She saw a lot, and that was only 100 years. So, okay, we just look back at what your parents did, their routines, and what they had available to make life easier for them. Mm-hmm. There's lots and lots of changes.
Penny, if I can go back to what we were speaking about before, the forming of the plasma field or manifestation of what we call reality coming from consciousness. So I know sometimes in the community, and especially the community that we're offering this conference to, Multiple Realities in New York, these are people that are generally very well informed, and the purpose that we do these conferences, and I'm sure the reason why you teach and why I teach is to offer information and offer new thinking processes and new ways of beings for people to break out of this state of helplessness, state of hopelessness as well. And I have this school in New York, the Art of Energetic Healing School, and I've been teaching for nearly 20 years, and the biggest thing for me is letting people feel empowered. And if they come out of the year course and feel empowered that they have the ability, then I feel fantastic, one more super duper healer in the world. But what I come across, and it comes back to this idea that we inform the plasma field, is that a lot of people we know about all these things, the other dimensions, the different types of entities that are here, that are influencing us or not, about chemtrails, just that stepping up of information as you start to wake up. And people are very afraid to know these things. And I treat some people with kid gloves, because you always get that response a lot from people in this community, which is, if I give my attention to that which is deemed negative, like Illuminati or chemtrails or GMO foods, then I'm increasing the energy. And I think it's such a fine line for people to understand that enlightenment means to be informed, and to be frightened or not frightened is a choice. It's a choice to be informed and know what's happening. So how do you explain that to people that say, oh, I don't want to know about those things because they're negative? What do you say?
You're probably going to get swallowed in negativity. You have to pay attention to the whole spectrum, the whole thing. That's the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the funny, the ridiculous, the useful, the useless, etc. You cannot just selectively target one little area. You can choose to put energy into that, but if you are paying attention over here, there could be, somebody could say, like when my daughter was in Oroville, by the Oroville Dam back in January. She's a traveling nurse, okay? So I said to her, I don't like you being there. That dam is gonna have a problem. And when you went out there, I always look to see is she gonna be safe, et cetera, et cetera. And you weren't really safe. There was a problem with water and land. And she ended up, when the assignment ended, she went elsewhere. But the dam did overflow and it had all kinds of problems, et cetera, et cetera. So, she was like, oh, mother, et cetera. And I do run into that with my students. They are afraid. And, and I just say, if you're not watching the dam and it's getting ready to burst and you're going to get swept away, which is more negative? You're dead, or something that you prefer wouldn't happen. So at some point, you have to acknowledge what you need to be aware of in order to remain safe, in order to remain informed, and in order to make really good choices. If you don't want to hear the negative, then you're not going to see the fraud underneath a telephone call or an email or a salesman or whatever. You have to acknowledge the whole thing, or you're going to be taken advantage of. And that, once you see the negative, then you can just very gracefully say, I don't think I want to go there. I'm putting my time, my attention over here. And, to say I only want the, the positive it's the same thing as you only want the negative. It doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't bring you to power. You're choosing something that is either a knee-jerk reaction, or it's a fad, or it's a false, belief. And so to really wake up means you have to, and this is one of the issues. This is something I'm dealing with several of my students who are in full-blown Kundalini right now. When you wake up, when consciousness wakes up all the way, you will feel every single thing going on in the world. It's absolutely overwhelming. And there's no way around it. You have to deal with it. And you have to find strategies in yourself for coping with enormous amounts of knowing and pain and hurt and sorrow and anger and frustration, and still keep yourself in a balanced position. So it's really, really, it's an important lesson that you're waking up and coming to power and dealing with multiple dimensions of reality requires that you look at the good, the bad, and the in-between, everything in between. Absolutely requires it. Otherwise, you're just lopsided in another direction.
And I think as we're looking at the good and the bad, I think what we're learning too is neutrality. To me, that's the real key too, is like to be informed, right, and to remain neutral, and
right,
not go into the state of fear, but to go into the state of action and empowerment. So let me ask you, I know you've done so much work with the late Dr. William Levengood, and we spoke about that in our last interview, and I know you're going to elaborate on that a lot more when you come to New York. So everyone, please check out the multiplerealitiesny.com website, the names of all of our speakers, their bios, the incredible list of talks that will be there, and Penny Kelly will be giving us a very wonderful, elaborate talk on plasma fields and on the crop circle phenomenon, which I know many people are so interested in. And so when you were working with Dr. Levengood, I know that led to some sort of discovery that connected the plasma field experiments that we were doing to connecting it to crop circle formations. Can you just give us just a little teaser about what you learned? And and hopefully people will come to New York or live stream us and find out so much more.
Okay. So what Levengood was working with in the lab was material for crop circles, at the grasses, soils, plants, seeds, all that kind of stuff. And he discovered this form of energy. And then he discovered that people had the same energy. And then he discovered that animals had the same energy. And so he was like, So long story short, it came down to what he had discovered was that people, plants, and animals were a collection of plasmas. You, me, the dog, my cow, everything is a collection of plasmas. And the plasmas all work together to create a form. So that then was something that we worked with quite a bit. And that is why a crop circle will appear in response to your plasma, because all plasmas are communicating. So then we were doing some experiments in the lab, and I'll just kind of shorten it and say, we had a sealed water tank on the bench, and I was communicating with that water and asking it to show me that it was listening to me. And I was using my eyes and just my mind, this consciousness. And so the water, went back and forth. We had it hooked up to a chart recorder. And so it printed out different signals for each of the different motions that I was doing with my eyes or envisioning. I was envisioning different, different motions. One was back and forth, vertically or horizontally. One was up and down, around in circles to the left, around in circles to the right, infinities, and then boxed at the corners, etc. And that, what we discovered was that water was listening, and it was printing out a different signal for each time I changed what I was doing. And, it became the first evidence that that consciousness responds directly to consciousness, or that plasma responds directly to consciousness. And that became this, okay, people in the New Age community have been saying that for how long? Even scientists have said, oh dear, it's changing as we observe it. And there was the connecting link to that old science in which scientists said, it can't possibly be. Quantum mechanics can't possibly be. Well, yes, they can, because plasma is consciousness. And when you shift your consciousness and direct it somewhere, and there's some constraining factors, but I'll go over those at the conference, and how to make it work and how to get beyond the constraining factors and begin to literally shape the reality the way that you want it to be. Because, and I think even for the super soldiers that are going to be speaking at the conference, in my observations of them, it's all consciousness. It's every bit of it, the whole thing. It's they could probably be deprogrammed in about 30 seconds, maybe 10 minutes to be a little more practical, but in a very short time, because it's all consciousness. It's all done with consciousness. So once you understand the nature of consciousness, which is what I'm talking about when I say, it's time for us to develop ourselves, to begin that development process, to begin to understand the nature of reality and the nature of consciousness, then you begin to approach power. Then you begin to own it. And after you own it, you can begin to use it. So we've got a ways to go, but we have to start somewhere.
Water is listening.
Everything is listening. Everything is everything. Everything is responding. And so occasionally I can.
That's part of the empowerment is to be in communication with what we consider outside of ourselves in a more direct way, because we don't necessarily know that everything is listening and communicating with us. So that's part of the evolution, the wake up.
That's right. That's right. And so when you come to like our society where the NSA and everybody is listening and watching, we are beginning to approach the conditions of a fully awakened consciousness. And what are we doing here? We're freaking out over it. Don't be listening to me. Don't be talking to me. Don't be watching me. Don't be tracking me, etc., etc. In a fully awakened state, you're watching, you're listening, you're tracking everything. And having been in some of those states of consciousness, which I'll say more about at the conference, those are the states of consciousness where what you think happens instantly. And you can see it, hear it, watch it, smell it, taste it. You shift physical matter right before your eyes. And change something maybe in a direction that it needs to go, that kind of power is extraordinary. And having, stepped into that several times, all I can say is, we're coming to a point in this civilization where we have to say we're going forward or we're falling apart, and maybe some will go forward and some will fall apart, but we're at that fork in the road. So it's very important to make an informed choice. Everything is listening, everything is communicating, and that only gets more intense and more clear as you evolve further.
So if we're looking at the development of plasma, sorry, does that sound a bit crazy?
No, So I hear you fine.
As we're looking into the future, you have a very cheery, happy view of the future, and that's obviously related to your understanding of plasma field and to your own personal experiences. do you see that this more evolved or more aware or highly communicating future is something that we will be experiencing shortly, or is it something that you see further down the human timeline? Like when are we going to get there? Penny, when are we going to get there?
Yeah, not shortly. We're right in the crucible right now. And there's decisions that have to be made, and people are making them, et cetera, and we're slowly moving forward. But the biggest thing that we have not restored relationship with is Mother Earth. When in ancient times, we had a relationship with Mother Earth, with the wind, with the rain, with the sun, with the plants, with the animals. Everything was communicating. The earth really responded to us, and we knew what she was thinking and what she was needing to do and how she operated and how she functioned. And today, we don't know anything. We don't have a relationship with the sun. We don't have a relationship with other planets or stars or other beings. We're still trying to tell ourselves we're the only ones in the universe. It's like, okay, all right, good luck with that. We're not the only ones, and we need to be communicating. Mother Earth is the biggest factor right now, and over the next 4 years. And and we need to be communicating with her, talking to her, telling her it's okay, it's all right. This is what we need. This is, let us know if such and such. And we don't have any connection to the natural world. And so nobody's paying attention to what's happening in the natural world. And that's going to be the death of some people. So, and we live such rigid lives. We're stuck in cities, in high-rise buildings. We can't run anywhere because we don't have enough energy to run. We can barely walk. And to drive, if we all had to leave the city in a minute, it's not going to happen. And so we have trapped ourselves and built this very elaborate trap around ourselves. And I think there's ways to rebuild the infrastructure such that everybody's in communication with Mother Nature, everybody's safe, everybody can move freely, and we have to start talking about that. Otherwise, we're going to lose massive amounts of people when Mother Earth is doing what she needs to do. So the Indians migrated for a reason, the North American Indians. Other tribes in Europe, in Asia, migrated for a reason, because they were making sure that everything had a chance to renew. We're not doing that. We don't watch how many people we're having. There's too many people. I mean, I love every one of them, but at some point we have to say, okay, we need a little attrition here. I know that's not what people want to hear. People don't understand sex. So, sex is a huge weapon. It's a huge weapon for power, for money, and for war. And, you got to produce babies in order to have more work done for you by the slaves. You have to produce people in order to have more warriors. You have to, produce people in order to have enough demographic, presence in order to take over an area. And what for? Why? That's just so short-sighted. And, I am a farmer, and I see life and death on a regular basis. And, we are going to evolve past death, but we certainly aren't there yet. We have a long way to go. So when I talk about evolution, I'm talking about evolution to become self-sustaining on a continuous and ongoing basis. Self-sustaining for hundreds of thousands of years. This form that we have here should last a lot longer than it does. And we so abuse it. And we're so ignorant about what we're doing. that, you know, we're gone before we ever get a chance to achieve any wisdom.
We're
So,
talking about
you
the
know,
physical.
talking about the physical,
Yeah,
talking about the physical thing.
that it should last another couple hundred years or 1,000 years.
Yeah, it should last a minimum of 10 times your age at puberty. Whatever age you were, that should be the point, the earliest point at which death would take over. If you were 15, that's 150 years. If you were 12, that's 120 years. We're barely making it to 60 and 70. And when people get to be 60 and 70, they're in such bad shape, they can't do anything. They need other people to take care of them. So, you know, there are people on record who live to be 250 years old, and there are people before that who lived hundreds of years. There's a few still on the planet. They don't come out and talk about what they're doing. They're very quiet. They go about their business, you know, and we have some records in the Bible of people who lived for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And we didn't, you know, you only left here when you were done here. So, you know, we leave way too early and for all the wrong reasons. And we leave unwillingly. So healing, you know, one of the things you're teaching is that's something that should be practiced for the self continuously, without limit, without breaking up. I mean, we should not be falling apart. And once you get to a point where you learn how to use breath, then you begin to approach what I call the path to eternity. So that's part of what I'll talk about at the conference, that whole, you know, the human potential, the path to eternity, becoming an eternal being, etc. So, and plasma's role in that.
Fabulous. That would be so fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you in New York, Penny. It's going to be a blast. And I know that we're going to have the most interesting time also just with the communication between the speakers. Like, as you said, we have people from all over the world. We have super soldiers from America. We have Ida Zavala Lopez, who's a curandera, a shaman. Actually, she's an anthropologist from the Amazon jungle. We also have Native American grandmother Three Crow coming, and she'll be speaking about the old indigenous ways in North America. We also have Scott Onstott speaking about sacred geometry and the golden ratio. Ole Damagard speaking about false flags and current political and social events, and perhaps another way we might just look at them and really look underneath what's going on, not to find the negative, but to be informed, to really know what's going on and to feel empowered. We're very lucky also to be seeing Duncan Cameron, who is not someone who comes up to the surface much. People will know him as very famous for his work in the Montauk Project. He was the famous psychic, and he's been very fragile for the work that he's done, and he's coming forward now to speak about his work, which I believe is really with the plasma field and how to work with reality, how to read reality. So I know there's going to be some very interesting discussions between all of you, and that's why it's such a joy to organize these conferences, because bringing together people that normally are not in the same room. And I think also there's something so special when you all come together, that we're also creating new bonds, and perhaps when these great minds come together, also offering some more solutions. So at the moment we're trying to build in some more panel discussions as well into the conference, so that you can approach each other on the stage and share with the audience. So I'm so excited. So everyone, please sign up, buy a ticket, and come and see Penny Kelly at multiplerealitiesny.com. And I know, Penny, your books are brilliant. So many of my friends and students have been reading them. And I know you also do private sessions with people by Skype.
Yeah, that's true.
How can people reach you and find your books?
Well, I have a new website up as of 2 days ago. It's a bare bones one, but it's working after a lot of hair pulling. So the site is consciousnessonfire.com, just like it's all one word, consciousnessonfire.com. You can get my books in ebook form at that site. I have an old site that isn't closed down yet, but soon will be. That's pennykelly.com, and that will point toward consciousnessonfire.com. And then my books are on Amazon. You know, all my contact information is on the site. So just give me a call, or better yet, send an email, because I don't sit still very often. I'm not by the phone very often.
Can you just let us know, if people want to do a private session with you, what sort of things can they come to you for help? What sort of issues can you deal with?
Lots of stuff with Kundalini, anything, so really almost anything. Personal development, spiritual direction, and learning how to manage your health, getting healthy. Because when you try to develop your personal self, the first thing you run into is your body and all the things that don't work very well. And so I have a book called Getting Well Naturally that I ask people to read. But I look at people's past lives and say, this is what you were doing, and this is what you were learning, and these are probably the issues you're going to have this coming year because of that life, etc. I look at people's numbers very briefly. When people get born, they choose a birth date, and that date will forever impact the kinds of lessons and the path that they're going to end up taking. And so that kind of, you know, it all feeds in. And then I tell people, bring your questions. It can be anything from, you know, I'm buying this house and here's the address. Do you see anything? To, you know, I'm struggling with this, or relationship. I tell people anything. Relationships, money, education, career, blah, blah, blah. Spiritual development, health, whatever it is. So, and we spend an hour. I record that and send them the recording. So that's it.
Wonderful, thank you. And are you actually writing any new books at the moment?
Actually, yes, but it's not mine. I just finished publishing a book for a Catholic nun. Ooh. And I have another group of women in France who have asked me to publish a book for them, and so I'm in the process of doing that. But for my own self, my own books, my own research, I have one in the works. It doesn't have a title yet. It doesn't have much form. I'm still gathering facts and information and perspective. And then I also have a book of poetry that I love poetry. I write poetry. So I'd like to publish that. But now my Consciousness on Fire has a little weekly podcast, and it's only somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, but I'm doing that each week now. So, and I'm putting my courses, Intuition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, up online. And so that's probably going to push the books out of the way until I get those courses up online. That's going to be probably a year's project. So I got the first one half done. So I'm celebrating that.
Keeping you busy.
Yeah.
I love the Consciousness on Fire. I think that's a great name. So thank you so much, Penny. And we'll see you in a few weeks, a few months in New York City.
Yeah.
We're talking today on August
October
6th. Today?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And
August 6th. So we got 2 months and 2 weeks to October 20th, 21st, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Very
We'll
good.
see you soon. Thank you so much. Lots of love.
You're welcome. Okay. Thank you. Take care.